accounting firms, and computer chip makers have all been built around Smith's central idea, the division of labor and the consequent fragmentation of work. The final evolutionary step in the development of corporations as we know them today came about in the United States between the end of World War II and the 1960s, a period of enormous economic expansion. An unrelenting demand for goods and services, both at home and abroad, shaped the economic environment. Deprived of material goods, first by the Depression, then by war, customers were more than happy to buy whatever companies offered them. Any house, any car, any refrigerator were infinitely better than none at all. In the 1950s and 60s, the chief operational concern of company executives was capacity. That is, being able to keep up with ever-increasing demand. Moreover, companies were encouraged by new office technology to break down even more of their white-collar work into small, repeatable tasks that could be mechanized. As the number of tasks grew, however, managing such a process became more complicated and difficult. The growing number of middle managers was one of the prices that companies paid for the benefit of fragmenting their work into simple steps and organizing themselves hierarchically. These, then, are the roots of today's corporation, the principles forged by necessity on which today's companies have structured themselves. The reality that organizations have to confront, however, is that the old ways of doing business, the division of labor, simply does not work anymore. Suddenly, the world is a different place. Three forces are driving today's companies into frighteningly unfamiliar territory: customers, competition, and change. Let's look at how these three C's have changed. Since the early 1980s, in the United States and other developed countries, the dominant force in the seller-customer relationship has shifted. Sellers no longer have the upper hand. Customers do. Customers now tell suppliers what they want, when they want it, and what they will pay. Consumer expectations soared in the United States when competitors, many of them Japanese, burst upon the market with lower prices combined with higher quality goods. This was mass production plus quality, price, selection, and service. Customers have gained the upper hand in their relationships with sellers in part because they now have easy access to enormously more information. Consumer shortages no longer exist. On the supply side, more producers now operate around the world. On the demand side, developed countries have lower population growths. Also, many product markets have matured. Almost everyone who wants one now owns a refrigerator, a videocassette recorder, and a personal computer. These industries are in a replacement mode. Consequently, consumers can be very choosy. With trade barriers falling, no company's national turf is protected from overseas competition. When the Japanese, or the Germans, French, Koreans, or Taiwanese are free to compete in the same markets, just one superior performer can raise the competitive threshold for companies around the world. Startup companies can enter a market with the next product before existing companies can even recoup their development costs on the last one. Big is no longer impregnable. The rapidity of technological change promotes innovation. Product life cycles have gone from years to months. Ford produced the Model T for an entire human generation. On the other hand, a company in the pension business recently developed a service with an anticipated life of exactly 3 months. Today, companies move fast or they don't move at all. The 3 C's have created a new world for business. Some people blame corporate America's problems on factors beyond management's control: closed foreign markets, the low cost of Japanese capital, or predatory pricing by foreign companies. They blame unions or poorly educated and unmotivated American workers. But if these reasons accounted for our dilemma, nearly all American companies would be in decline. But they are not. Sears may be losing its market, but Walmart and the Gap are thriving. GM has trouble making world-class cars in America, but Honda does not. Our diagnosis of America's business problems is simple, but the corrective action that it demands is not easy. To illustrate what we mean, let's look at a common process found in practically every company in America. Order fulfillment begins when a customer places an order and ends when the goods are delivered. Typically, the process includes a dozen or so steps performed by different people in different departments. Someone in customer service receives the order and logs it in. Then the order goes to finance, where someone else runs a credit check on the customer. Then the order travels to inventory control, where someone checks to see if the goods are on hand. Warehouse operations then delivers a shipment schedule. Traffic determines the shipment method. Product handling gets the products from the warehouse. Traffic releases the goods to the carrier, which then takes responsibility for delivering them to the customer. The process is complex, but it does have certain advantages. First, companies don't have to hire people with advanced degrees to get it done. Second, everyone on the process is accountable through the bureaucratic chain of command. The trade-offs? First, because no one in the company oversees the whole process and its result, no one person is responsible for it. Second, with so many people involved, the process is error-prone. We call this the Humpty Dumpty School of Organizational Management. Companies take a natural process such as order fulfillment and break it into lots of little pieces. Then the company has to hire all the king's horses and all the king's men just to paste the fragmented work back together again. The king's horses and king's men have titles such as auditor, expediter, controller, liaison, supervisor, manager, and even vice president. They are simply the glue that holds together the people who do the real work. In most companies, direct labor costs may be down, but overhead costs are way up. Most companies today, in other words, are paying more for the glue than for the real work. A recipe for trouble.
Reengineering the corporation is the path to change. Formally defined, reengineering is the fundamental rethinking and radical redesign of business processes to achieve dramatic improvements in critical contemporary measures of performance, such as cost, quality, service, and speed. This definition contains 3 key words. The first key word is fundamental. In doing reengineering, business people must ask the most basic questions about their companies and how they operate. Why do we do what we do? And why do we do it the way we do it? Asking these fundamental questions forces people to look at tacit rules and assumptions that underlie the way they conduct their businesses. Reengineering begins with no givens. For instance, to ask, how can we perform customer credit checks more efficiently, assumes that customer credit must be checked. In many instances, the cost of checking may in fact exceed the bad debt losses that checking avoids. Reengineering first determines what a company must do, then how to do it. It takes nothing for granted. The second key word is dramatic. Reengineering isn't about making marginal changes, but about achieving quantum leaps in performance. If a company falls 10% short of where it should be, if its costs are 10% too high, that company does not need reengineering. More conventional methods can dig a company out of a 10% hole. Reengineering should be brought in only when a need exists for heavy blasting. From our experience, we have identified 3 kinds of companies that undertake reengineering. First are companies in deep trouble. They have no choice. Ford Motor Company in the early 1980s is a case in point. Second are companies that are not yet in trouble, but whose managements have the foresight to see trouble coming. Aetna Life and Casualty in the last half of the 1980s is an example. The third type are those that are in peak condition, but their managements are ambitious and aggressive. Examples include Hallmark and Walmart, companies who see reengineering as an opportunity to further their lead over their competitors. The third key word is process. This key word is the most important in our definition. We define a business process as a collection of activities that take one or more kinds of input and creates an output that is of value to the customer. We illustrated a process when we talked about order fulfillment, which takes an order as its input and results in the delivery of ordered goods. Managers traditionally focus on the individual tasks in this process and tend to lose sight of the larger objective. We will use 3 examples of reengineering to illustrate how it works and what it accomplished for IBM Credit, Ford Motor, and Kodak. IBM Credit Corporation, a wholly owned subsidiary